All I'm going to be doing today is, I've had like a crazy week, and then I had a bit of time now. Good, thank you. So I thought I'd just use it, and I'm going to do 20 or 30 minutes here, chat about a few things, and if there's any questions and stuff, like always, really, just interact. I haven't done a live on Instagram for a while. I tried one earlier in the week, and my signal let me down, and I've changed provider now. So it's not changed yet, but it's all being installed and coming soon, and it's going to be much better. Houston, Texas. I did some stuff in Texas for recovery center, an equine recovery center, which was amazing. So look, I wanted to talk because I thought what would be quite good. I had a week, some of you may have seen, I'm not going to go into the details of it again because it's all kind of been resolved now. But I had some stuff go on this week that really triggered me, right? And I thought what would be really good is to like talk people through how I experienced that, what that meant, and how I navigated my way through that, and what I think that means for healing. Because I see a lot of stuff online, you see a lot of the ways that people talk about healing and talk about this journey. And for me, a lot of it doesn't resonate, and it doesn't kind of line up and fall in with how I experience what healing has been to me. Okay, so I want to try and see if we can dive into some of that. And then look, I know a lot of people like to talk about parents and stuff, and we've got Christmas coming up, so maybe we'll dive into some of that afterwards. But what happened, basically the experiences that I had at the beginning of the week was to do with, how can I describe it? People within a position of power, questioning the terminology that I and other people that I know particularly use. And I want to just get into why that triggers me so much and why I think it's important to have proper and meaningful conversations around this, particularly when it comes to self-identification and the ways that we talk about our own experience. Because I want to question a few of the ways, and I want to question a few things. I want to see if I can get curious about them, right? Now, look, to start with, the reason I was so triggered by it, what do I mean when I say triggered? It sent me back to when I was a child, right? And I felt very much like I was being told what was happening in my experience. And that although it didn't line up to the ways that I was feeling, the way that I was feeling must be wrong. And so I need to fall in line with the narrative and the ways that people want to describe my experience. Now, I think that is dysfunctional, right? Whenever that happens, and there's a lot of talk, I'll say it's about the word alcoholic. I don't particularly use it for myself. I identify as a child of an alcoholic, particularly to other people, because I think it's like really resonates deeply with people that have had the same experiences as me. But my idea around terminology and stuff like that changes, right? But I think dysfunction is when we tell people that they don't get to have their experience, right? Dysfunction is when we say to people, the way that you are identifying or the way that you are describing your experience is wrong. Now, this is hugely problematic. Why is that? If you grew up in any level of dysfunction, right, you will have learned, or you will have likely learned, to begin to self-organize. What I mean by self-organize is to abandon myself and the ways that I feel and begin to organize the way that I express myself, be that with words or the way that I show up. I begin to organize and edit everything that I think before I express it, right? And so I come completely away from my authenticity, and I stop trusting myself, and I stop trusting my body. That happens on micro levels, I believe, for children. So I can do this to my own kids, by the way. I might say to my children, don't be silly, that's not happening, right? What I actually mean is, you've spotted something and you have picked up on and felt something that is happening, but I am not available to be able to go there, right? So that can happen on a micro level like that. I think that happens for a lot of children. I think it's happening more and more for a lot of children as we live in busier and busier environments with lots more things to take our attention away. And we live less and less in community. So if I have only one or two parents or caregivers in the house and I'm a child, there's a good chance they might be looking at a device or they might be busy, right? So micro levels, even with good parents, right? we're taught not to trust our bodies. Don't be silly, nothing's going on here, right? And then that can go right up when you go towards the other end of that spectrum, when you get into like severe levels of dysfunction. That's when you will have your experience denied. And I talk a lot about like toxic parents, right? A lot of people will see me talk about that, and that will be when you will be straight up told your experience doesn't exist, right? And so you might have as a child been like, I feel like you're being horrible to me. I feel like you're really angry with me. I feel like there's a venom in your words, right? And as a child, you would have had that completely questioned. And so you would have sat there and found yourself thinking, am I going crazy, right? And you'd begin to question your reality, right? And then you'll begin to find yourself self-organizing and self-editing in an act of self-abandonment so that you can show up for the people around you in a way that is acceptable, so you might get accepted and loved. All right, so I think that happens to all of us to any degree, right? So for me, a massive part of the healing experience and the healing journey is to find your truth, okay? And then speak it and allow that truth to change and evolve as you speak it, and never have that truth questioned by anybody. If anybody feels uncomfortable with the terminology that you're using to describe your experience, right? Not if you're describing their experience, that's different, and I'll try and get onto that, right? Not if you're describing somebody else's experience, not if you're describing a collective of experiences. If you are describing your own experience, right? If it's making other people feel uncomfortable, right? And they want to start telling you to stop doing it as a result, yeah? They have no right. Firstly, they have no right. And secondly, the work that needs to be done is not around your terminology, right? You don't have to start thinking about how you explore your experience and whether you're using the right words. No, right? That doesn't reduce stigma. That doesn't help healing, right? That further restricts people. It pushes them further down the path of self-organizing and self-managing and self-editing. No, you speak openly about your experience, yeah? You can't on the one hand say to everybody, we're trying to break stigma and get people to talk about their experiences, and then on the other hand saying, but by the way, some of the words that you might use to explore your experience are going to make me feel uncomfortable, so I want you to change them. Okay? That doesn't make sense, okay? So, and so, that's, you know, when we start talking about that in that way, that's where will always be my view and the way that I experience that, yeah? Freedom is what we should be seeking in the healing journey. Does that make sense? And so it's been important to me to understand that on my own journey, on my own healing journey, right? For me to be able to stand strong in my experience, and to stand strong in the ways that I feel. So what does that mean in terms of what I've navigated throughout the week? Something that I was talking about in my online community space that I have earlier today was also not just the importance of having my grace and autonomy to explore and be curious about my own experience, allowing my terminology to change, allowing myself to find new words and drop old words, right? But also allowing myself the autonomy and grace to feel the ways that I feel. So particularly in Western culture, we really struggle with anger, right? Nobody's allowed to feel angry, right? And so there's this push whenever you're angry to don't be angry, let's just sweep that under, let's deal with this so that everybody's angry. And again, for me, that's not healing, right? It's a new way of suppression of the ways that we feel. And so what I recognize about my own experience over the course of 10 years, and I talked about this recently in a post, is how my experience changes all of the time. Yeah. Let me pick this question up, right? I'm gonna jump in. Just joined. Do you think the reason they feel uncomfortable is because they're being triggered? I understand we should tiptoe around people's triggers, but should we maybe talk to people who are willing? I don't think I should tiptoe around people's triggers when I'm talking about my own experience. I don't think anybody should. That's my point. I think if you're talking about your own experience, nobody else's, my own, right? If I'm talking about my own experience, right, it's not my job to make sure that other people feel comfortable around it. That's their job, right? Otherwise, I'm getting into the realms of trying to control the ways that people feel, right? So I think there should be a freedom for me to talk about my own experience. Now, if I find myself talking about a collective experience or somebody else's experience, right, then I can start to look at my terminology, and I would choose to pick whatever terminology you wanted to use, right? If somebody said to me, here's how I want you to identify me and here's the words that I use, then I would use them. And also if somebody said to me, here's what I'm feeling at the moment, and I feel sad, lonely, and depressed, for example, right? Then I would reflect back. I understand that you feel sad, lonely, and depressed. I wouldn't go, hang on a minute, you said depressed, are you sure you're depressed? Or let's make sure that you've got a diagnosis before you use the word. No, I would allow people to do that. When I'm talking about my own experience, or when anybody's talking about their own experience, right, it is dysfunctional to expect them to walk on eggshells and make sure that it doesn't offend anybody, right? Because then, if you do that, if we say to everybody, I want you to start to self-manage, right, and become aware of the words that you use, and I know you're describing your experience, but some of the words that you could use could upset people, right? How much different is that to when you were a child, or when one was a child, right? And it was like, I need to make sure that I self-manage, I need to make sure that I self-organize, and I need to be careful of the words that I say, because I don't want to be the one that triggers the alcoholic in the room, yeah? Which is what I grew up in, yeah? So actually, the healing is for me to step into my body, into ways that I feel, and say, this is my experience, this is how I feel, and these are the words that I'm forming at the moment as I get curious about the ways that I'm feeling. If that makes people around me feel uncomfortable, that's their problem, okay? And I stand by that. And I think that's why, look, there's lots of terminology that I don't use for myself, yeah? Very common things. Forget the addiction space, right? In general, in the mental health. I don't even like the term mental health, right? I don't like using it for myself, although sometimes it's completely unavoidable. But if somebody said I'm struggling with my mental health, I wouldn't say, well, I'm sorry, but I don't like that terminology, right? I would allow people to have their experience, and I would recognize that we all get to live and be who we want to be. And community is about the ability to be able to hold that experience together. Yeah? Does that make sense? Oh, you meant shouldn't tiptoe. Sorry. I've only just spotted that after doing the whole talk on it. Willing to listen. So let me just see. I understand we shouldn't tiptoe around people's triggers, but should we maybe talk to people who are willing to listen? Yeah, I think I understand the question. Some people saying agree. Any more questions in here? My parents still will shut me down about my issues, then competes with me and makes it about them. And this is the thing, right? And I think this is why self-identification is really, really important, is because anybody that has any kind of neurotic emotional struggle, right, likely at some point in their life has had their experience denied, right? And so as you begin to find words, those words will change over time, and you'll find new words, and you'll look back and go, wow, I can't believe I ever used to identify in this way, and now I identify in that way. And it will change, right? And your terminology and the things that you say will change, particularly if you've come away from your authenticity when you were a child. And why do you come away from your authenticity? Because as a child, you were fed the information that in and of yourself, you weren't lovable. So let me self-organize and become a different version of myself. And that's self-abandonment, right? And I spent my life pleasing everybody around me, being, saying, and doing what I thought made me lovable and acceptable to the people around me. Healing is not about becoming an enlightened person who sits in a lotus position and loves, not for me anyway, loves everybody from afar, and you can say bad things to me, but I'm enlightened, so I understand the deep-rooted reason why I say it. No, not for me. Healing for me is going, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for, this is what matters to me, this is what I feel, and this is my experience. Yeah? And what that means is that I stop trying to be likable and I start being myself, that means some people won't like me, which I don't like, yeah? Because I want people to love me, and I'm a people pleaser, and I want everybody to accept and like and love me, yeah? So part of the healing journey is for me to be able to say, I accept that some people won't like me. I accept that I will have views that not everybody will like, yeah? And I think it's a sign of an unhealed, dysfunctional society that we live in at the moment, without getting too far out there, right? That we have this inability to be able to say, I quite like that person, but I don't like X, Y, or Z thing about them. Yeah, we find that sort of really, really difficult to do now. Like, if you go back like 20, 30 years, you used to be able to say, oh, I like that person, yeah. Like, oh, they're a bit of a knob when they do this, and I don't like the fact that they do that. But all around, I think like they're generally a good person. You can't do that now, right? You sort of get, it's like one strike and you're out, isn't it? One bad thing. And this is the thing, yeah? Like, we all have a shadow self. We all have parts of ourself that are not as likable. Yeah. And they'll come out. Yeah. And this is why I sometimes look out and I see people like mess up and do things, and I think, like, nobody wants to know what I'm capable of when I'm angry. Sometimes I say some of the things that I think, and they're not nice. Yeah. They're not nice. Does that make me a bad person? No, but it means that there's parts of myself that make people feel uncomfortable. Stand strong in your experience. I stood firm with my 16-year-old. I've had enough of being a punch bag. It was a big jump of faith, as it means I may not see him at Christmas. That's hard for you. I'm sorry. Josh, how do you manage toxic parents who have health issues and ask for help, support, and listening, even if we put boundaries and limits? Look, the answer to that is not easy. I think you manage them by managing yourself first, and then doing whatever feels appropriate after that. This is why it's so important to be in my body and know my experience, right? So I can go into my body, I can go into my experience, and I can go, what's acceptable here? What can I deal with, and what feels okay to me within the limits of my boundaries, right? And if stuff outside of that doesn't feel okay, then you don't do it. And that's not easy in a society that tells you that it doesn't matter how abusive your parents are, right? It's irrelevant. You've got to just, like, especially if they're coming near the end or they've got health issues, it's like, for some reason you seem to owe them something. I don't know. I have an idea why that is. Yeah, I think there's lots of different reasons why that is. But ultimately, I think we have to be able to be in our bodies and know what's right for us. And if people don't like that, then frankly, fuck them. I don't like to swear too much, but I like to be blunt with that, because, you know, if you've grown up with a toxic parent, then you're tired. You're tired of being what everybody else thinks and wants you to be. You're tired of being, you know, every beck and call for the toxic parent. You're tired of then society on top of that not being willing to hear your experience, right? And not allowing you your experience because of the impact that it might have on the people that have been toxic and abused you all of your life. It makes no sense to me when we put it that bluntly and that clearly. I think that still makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And frankly, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry if anybody feels uncomfortable, but this is people's experience. And if hearing somebody's experience makes you feel uncomfortable, try fucking living it. Bit sweary today. What else we got? I've got like 5 more minutes. I call it mind health. I like that. Do you know what I call it? I just call it health. Because I don't think the body separates it. And actually, I think, look, one of the problems that I think we've got is that we're consistently trying to find new spangly ways to stay up in our head, to stay up in this rational part, so we never have to come down into our heart and feel what we're really feeling. I understand why we do that, because if we've chucked every difficult emotion down into our bodies all of our lives, then let's get up here. And I've been up here all week, by the way. I've been up here all week because I don't like to go down in here. So I know, for example, when I'm angry, because when I'm angry, my narrative, the voice, the way that I talk to myself, you know, if I think about how I view the world when I'm angry, I think the world is out to get me, and everybody is out to get me, and everybody's out to do one over on me. So I react to that by becoming, pump my chest out and right, let's have it then and let's go, right? And that's a part of me that exists. I need to understand that part of me, right? And I need to recognize when that shows up. Okay, here we are at anger. What am I going to do with that anger? And once upon a time, I did lots of bad things. Today in my life, I still sometimes do bad things, yeah, because anger is a really difficult emotion. But actually, I think this week, you know, I kept my voice and used my voice where I felt like it was needed. And other times I breathed and came back into my body and tried to allow some of that anger to come out in the natural way that it does through conversations and through saying things. And this is why we should never get too upset with people when they just say things in the moment, right? Because when we're angry, we say things that we don't mean. But I think as well, when you have a high level of sensitivity, and you know, if you've lived with a toxic parent, you'll have a high level of sensitivity. You know a toxic person when you're in the presence of them, yeah? And listen, I haven't got a load of science and statistics to back that up, but I know very quickly, yeah? I know when somebody's trying to control me. I know when somebody's using a subtle sense of words and what they're doing. I know. I've seen it, and I know it a mile off. And do you know what I do today? Do you know what, for me, part of healing is? Trusting that. Trusting that and being able to say to myself, I don't like this person, and I'm not going to let them be in my life or play any kind of role in the way that I show up, because I don't like their energy. Now, that doesn't even have to mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that. It might just mean that our energies are clashing. But this is the world that we live in, right? And so I get to choose what's right for me in that moment, yeah? I know a lot of people only see the good in people. And if you only see the good in people, it can be a great trait. But if you don't have boundaries, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you. Because don't only see the good in people. See the bad in them as well, yeah? See the good in them, see the bad in them, listen to your body, and then make a judgment on whether they get to be in your circle. That's, for me, how the game works, right? That's how the game works for me, yeah? Sometimes and this is like uncomfortable stuff. I get it. It's not easy to say, right? But when I get to the truth, I'm a truth seeker. That's where I get to. And for me, healing isn't loving everybody and, you know, being unaffected by everyone. I can love the world at a core level. Yeah, I can do that. I can be loving at my core, which I try to be, and know that there are lines, and I have my own energies and I have my boundaries, and I want to protect them. And so I will make a judgment based on the ways that I feel. I'll trust my body, yeah, because I've learned and started to do that again through lots of different things that I do. I'll trust my body, I'll trust the ways that I feel, and I'll trust my judgments, yeah. And if they're wrong, then you know, I live and die by that. I missed all the third-party drama, but as usual, you are right. Thank you. Yeah, the drama's gone. It's in the past. It's done. So, like, it doesn't need to be talked about. How do I explain a toxic parent, and how do I make them feel? How do I explain a toxic parent and how they make me feel to someone that doesn't have a toxic parent but wants to help and listen? Show them my profile. I put all of these talks, they're all recorded, so they're all on my YouTube channel. So a lot of people say that they do that they show that. And then say how you feel. This is what happens, and this is how I experience it. And this is important, yeah, because the eyes are not just lenses, right? They're projectors. So your experience of how you experience one situation is allowed to be different to how another person experiences it. So there ain't no right language to use, is there? Because you'll project a tape over it, right? We see this, I think we see this all of the time with things that happen in sort of popular culture, right? I use I don't know their names, Amber Heard and the pirate guy as an example, right? If you've experienced a smear campaign at the hands of a partner who was female, you might look at that whole situation and you're going to project a different story onto that than, say, a female who has been in an abusive relationship with a male. You're going to see the same things completely differently because of the tape that runs over the top. And I think that's true of all our experiences, right? And so we don't know what's right and wrong there. but we don't just see through our eyes. Yeah, our eyes project a story over the top of everything as well. So the reason I say that is because your experience is your experience. That makes sense, right? It's your experience. Nobody gets to tell you what happened or how to label it or what you think is right or what is wrong. And that's why I get a little bit, when you look at like the addiction field that's spending so much money on how we frame people's experiences, you don't get to frame my experience. You don't get to frame it. Yes, do I think professionals, doctors and people in that sort of area should use certain terminology? Yeah, I don't care that much, but I think some people do, so that's fine. So they should use terminology, agreed terminology that's going to have the least amount of negative impact and the least stigmatizing. Absolutely agree with that. But you don't get to define my experience, not remotely. You don't get to pick what words I use. Yeah, I'll pick them, right? And I'll change them. And I'll change my mind on them, and my experience will change, and I'll go on that journey. And if you don't want to support me in that, you don't want to be with me in that, then what? Then don't. But you don't get to tell me what's right and wrong with my experience. And I think this is a common and needed conversation. Right, I'm going to do 5 more minutes maximum. What advice would you give to a child who tells their parent there is a problem, and gets told in return it's problem B, and then offers solution B and rejects problem A in parenting? Right, let me try and get that. What advice would you give a child who tells their parent there is a problem, A, and gets told in return it's not that, it's a different problem, and offers solution B and rejects problem A? I'm struggling with the question, and but drop me a message and I'll try and answer it. If then you might be able to give me more context. My parent will avoid any possibility of me sharing how I'm feeling, as I've always suppressed my emotions for so long. Yeah, exactly. And this is again why it's so important. Yeah, if somebody has the bravery and the courage to come out and say, here's my experience, right? If you pick apart the terminology and say, okay, that's fine that you have that experience, but can we be mindful of the language we use? For me, that's not right. Can we completely ignore how our own emotions impact others? Can we completely ignore how our emotions impact others? It depends on the context. No, I feel like I want to say no. Can we completely ignore how our emotions impact others? Let me think of myself as a father. My emotions will impact my children. I don't think it's okay for me to just allow my emotions to impact them in a negative way. Would I want my emotions to impact other people negatively that are close to me, my friends? No, I don't think so. So I don't think we can completely ignore how our emotions impact others. I think we have a responsibility in a collective society to try and navigate things together. So like in day-to-day living, if I'm really angry, I don't want to be shouting at everyone on the tube, do I? So look, it's like everything, right? The answer's somewhere in the middle. Can we completely ignore it? No, but if I'm in an experience of heightened angst or a heightened level of emotion, then it's not easy, is it? I've sort of danced around the houses a little bit there and not answered that very well, but it's a bloody good question. I worry about the day I receive a call to tell me my mother has passed. I think about it all the time. Although I cut my alcoholic mother out of my life, she has left huge scars. Yeah, and they're probably wounds. They're probably not even scars, right? Maybe they're wounds, right? Maybe they're still open for you. And I totally get that and understand that. And I think if you look back over some of the other content that I've posted, lots of people talk about this, by the way, the guilt that you might feel when they're gone. And it's such a horrible and difficult situation, one that I can't offer any words that are going to make it feel better for you. Just know that you're really, really not alone in it. And I guess when I look at my own experience, my dad died when I was 9 years old, and I'm fortunate in that respect, because I've been able to draw that line and do lots of healing work around it. If he was still here, right, and still as bad with his drinking as he was, then who knows how I would deal with it? Who knows how I would deal with it? So I sort of can resonate with what you're saying. Right, let me do one more. If there is any more. Otherwise I don't. Right, God, I'm miles behind here. How do you manage a narcissist who left me and says it's my fault? Cut them out. Don't let them have any access to you whatsoever. If they're an actual narcissist, don't manage them. Cut them out and cut contact to as minimum as you possibly can get it. If there's no reason for them to be in your life, a call just came through then. If there's no reason for them to be in your life, then cut them out. Get rid of them, okay? Okay. Something's going on here now because I had a phone call. Has it ruined it? Have I completely lost you? It's like flashing at me now anyway. Okay, look, I'm going to use that as a way and a reason to shut this down because it doesn't look like it's going to catch up. I don't know if it's flashing your end, but my screen's gone all crazy here. Oh, it's back. It's back to normal now. But look, I'll use that as, that's probably a good line for me to shut it down, the phone ringing. Look, I've really enjoyed this. Yeah, somebody's saying I'm frozen now, so I don't know if I'm back. But I'll shut it down. I've really enjoyed this. This will be on my YouTube very soon as well. We can make lots of reels out of it. Oh, and we've got the trolls are back in. Can you tell me, Josh, qualifications, please, other than working in a factory? I'm gonna spend a little bit of time with the trolls. I talk openly about how I used to work in a factory, yeah. So I'm very fortunate to do the work that I do today. I'm a qualified breathwork facilitator. No, they're bots. Don't worry. Don't worry. I don't know who they are. They were in on a live with me last time and said that you work in a factory, which is a weird thing to troll me about because it's something that I talk very openly about. So yes, I'm a qualified coach and I'm a qualified breathwork facilitator and a qualified and a qualified absolute lad. And qualified decent hair. Does that go down? Can we say that as well? It's very greasy at the moment though. Anyway. Oh yes, excited for Inner You in January. If you're on here, come join Inner You. There's lots of people who have signed up already. Really looking forward to that. And anybody else that's on there. I've got a live breathwork session on my Breathing Space community platform later, which I'm buzzing for. You've got to see the playlist. Oh my days. There's another thing I'm qualified at, yeah. Absolute playlist god. Qualified lad and hair bun expert. Can't think of a better way to end. Thanks everybody. I'll save this on my profile so you can watch it too. And see you all very soon.